go. Hi, Mori.
Hi.
Welcome to She's Obsessed, the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
A pleasure is mine. So as you know, we've been talking about self-love a lot recently, and I definitely wanted to speak to you about self-love, but then also the way that it manifests in relationships, especially romantic relationships.
Oh, saucy.
Yeah. So we're getting the good stuff. But first, I want you to introduce yourself. Tell us a bit about your background, your amazing milestones that you've hit in your career so far. Don't be humble. And then we'll get into speaking about relationships and what it's like balancing such a high intensity career and maintaining a successful relationship.
Okay, so my name's Mori. I'm 28. I'm an event producer, freelance at the moment, and I've worked with some great brands within beauty and fashion. Also tech,
Yes.
recently.
Yeah.
My joy that comes from doing this is that about building communities and also building a tribe for a brand. So that's been my passion throughout creating offline experiences, event activations, and I've worked with some brands such as Nasty Girl, Warnell's, Galdem. Yeah, it's been great.
Cool. And milestones that you've hit in your career, because I know that you've made some serious money for a lot of brands.
Milestones that I've hit in my career. I would say probably with Nasty Girl, working with Nasty Girl was a really big milestone for me because that was a brand that was bought by Boohoo and did their first press event in London in 2017, and I got to work with them on that. So that was a big milestone for me. And also more recently working with Beauty Stack actually because they just launched.
Hey.
So working on the launch plan alongside Shamadi Mood.
Cool. And then take me back a bit further than that. So you didn't just land in a career in events. I know that we met in uni and you could never have a mediocre birthday. It always had to be so over the top.
Yep, that's me.
So talk to me about like your personal passions and then the way that showed up all the way through your life.
So my personal passion, so as Jamelia has rightly said, I am very OTT, so my birthdays were always a big deal for me. So ever since I was in secondary school, really, I would always be so extra. Like my 16th birthday, Chocodero, if you remember.
Yes.
Took all my friends to Chocodero. And
you took your friends?
Yeah, I took all my friends. I didn't just go with, like, I always, because I'm from an African background, so my dad always told me when I was growing up that if you invite people to your birthday, you need to host them and essentially you need to pay. So I always had this mindset that anytime I invite my friends out, I want them to experience something great. So my 16th birthday, I went Chocodero and Pizza Hut. Wasn't that great? But that was just the start. My 21st was a weekend bonanza.
And I missed it and I'm still so upset about that.
You missed it. It was a whole weekend. I got an apartment that overlooked the Thames. I got a white Hummer limousine. We went to a club. We also went to the countryside to do quad biking.
And you made everyone wear...
I made everyone wear the uniforms. I didn't know that I was coordinating, like, you know, great experiences like this.
That's a campaign.
Literally, it was a campaign. The campaign was called Fully Gassed. And then for my 25th birthday, I rented out a restaurant, a private one in Haymarket. And then I got a party bus that had unlimited alcohol that took a tour around London. So I'm just very OTT, and everyone always said, oh, you love events, why don't you do it? And at the time, I was just wanting to be a chartered marketer. Like, that's all I cared about. I just wanted to get up the career ladder. I was very traditional in my thinking, like having African parents, just go to uni, get a good job, work up the ladder. And that's what I thought I'd be doing. I never thought that I would get into the creative industry at all.
So you started off at L'Oreal.
Yeah.
In uni.
Yeah.
How was that? And then where did you go after that?
So L'Oreal stretched me. Like, I'm so happy that that's where I started my career. That was my placement year that we had to take as part of our degree. And I was working as a marketing assistant for Curator, which is one of their professional hair care brands. And the way L'Oreal work and the way my mindset was at 2021, like it just didn't match. But a lot of the things that I took from that experience has literally like catapulted me to where I am now. They always say at L'Oreal when I started, you're either here for 3 months, 3 years, or 30 years, meaning you're either there for a short time or a lifetime. And for me, it was not a lifetime. So after that, I worked at Dell Computers, which was totally different to L'Oreal. Very like chilled environment, like mostly men on the team. So it was just a lot of banter on the team. But I got to take what I learned from L'Oreal and impress them with my skills because honestly, they work so different. With all that experience, after I finished uni, I got a job with Mondelez International doing sales development, which is essentially field sales, where you have a territory and you would have to go and sell chocolates, which wasn't good for my waistline. But honestly, all the sales experience that I got from that literally helped me to essentially how I draw up deals with brand partnerships that I do.
Yeah.
So they trained us in sales for 3 weeks, and all that training is essentially what I've still used today.
I love that because I feel like a lot of the time it seems like you enter a career and then you're just good at it, but a lot of the time it's actually a journey, and along the journey you pick up gems, and then you're finally able to get into your groove and use all of those treasures that you've accumulated in your final role. So what was it like for you, or what has it been like for you leading such a busy life and trying to maintain a relationship? Because I know that we've had tons of conversations about how difficult it can be and then things that you can do to help. So walk me through like what your schedule is like typically, and then how that impacts relationships, whether it be with friends, family, and romantic relationships.
So for me, I live by my calendar. Like if it's not in there, it's not happening. So what I've had to do is I've had to incorporate how that shapes my relationships with my friends and with my partner. So I've been with my partner for over 3 years. I mean, I class it as long term. I don't know how these new kids nowadays class it, but I class that as a long term relationship.
I think that's long term.
So literally it's been a lot of learning how to come together and work the best way for each other. So we've had to schedule time for each other in our calendar. We have a shared calendar now.
Oh, wow. Wait. So you guys, you don't just schedule date night, but you actually have a shared calendar so that you can see what he's doing, he can see what you're doing. Yeah.
And when we first shared this with people, everyone's just like, oh, like, you lot are sharing, like is it kind of like, what's that film? That film when they're all watching you, where like CCTV's all watching you. It's not like that. It's not like you put in to your calendar everything that you're doing, but just like the important things that you know that this is what's going to be happening at this time in case it clashes.
Yeah.
Because like there's a lot of things we do. We share a car, so who's going to have the car this week? Who's going to do X, Y, Z? It's just for peace of mind, and it works like perfectly.
Do you put in things that you're doing separately in there?
Yep.
Okay.
So right now, this podcast is in the schedule, and he knows I'm here.
Perfect.
Yeah, but it's not to keep eyes on each other. It's just so we're aware that, okay, this week is a busy week for you. You know, this is what you're going to be up to. It's nothing.
Yeah, I don't think it's super intrusive. Does it help with communication, I'm assuming?
It helps with communication. It helps with understanding if someone's got a heavy week. Like, it's perfect. And in terms of how it relates to friends, as soon as someone says, oh, I'm celebrating my birthday, or there's this important date here, it has to go in the calendar.
And what led you to that point? Who made the suggestion? And can you talk to me about what it was like before you decided to adopt this shared calendar and have those lines of communication open?
So in real Mori style, it was me that suggested that we needed to have this calendar, because essentially that's how I organise my life.
Yeah.
And that's how I keep on top of all the things I need to do.
Is he the same, or is it just...
He is laid back, cool as a cucumber, can tell him like last minute, but in order for peace of mind, we had to come together and use this calendar just so we know how to communicate going forward, and we know how to juggle each other's workload. I'm a freelancer. my weeks change from day to day. Anything can be just sprung upon me. I can get an email for someone to work with me, then all of a sudden I've got a meeting. Like, that just happens so quick. So it's just about understanding different lifestyles and how we can come together and how we can plan each other's time with each other as well.
Was there ever a time when that was a problem?
That's had always been a problem, because we would just let weeks go by without thinking of each other.
Tell me a bit more about that.
So essentially, weeks could go by and, you know, there would be no date night, we wouldn't see each other, or we'll both just work. And, you know, that's not how you build a relationship. A relationship is built on you spending time together and communicating and building experiences. And it's very, very important that you put in time for that, because once that slips, you become into this routine, and then you start to act like you are both like OAPs. That's like all your kids have gone to uni and you're just at home just watching TV, and that's not, we're young.
Yeah.
It's meant to be still youthful. You're still meant to have fun. You're still meant to have that spark.
So what are some of the key things? Like, are you reading books? Are you listening to podcasts? Like, what's helping you guys along this journey?
So for me, because I'm just so like headstrong on everything that I want to achieve, I take personal development very, very seriously. So since 2016, I've been working on myself to be the best version of me. I've been reading a lot of books, and I've been listening to podcasts. I've been researching stuff like NLP. I've been listening to all these like great gurus like Oprah Winfrey and what she's been doing to get to the place that she is now. And my partner is so different to me. Like, I'm the spiritual, you know, he always calls me head in the clouds. Like, I'm the one that's meditating. I'm the one that's got the vision board. And he's the one that's just like, no, I'm here and now. I'm logistical. I'm like what is going on right now? I can't think like you.
Yeah.
But through my personal development, I've been able to encourage him to do different things. So, yeah, he's got a vision board now.
Oh, amazing. Was there any friction, though? Because I know that men don't like being told what to do. They like to feel like it's their idea.
Yeah.
Before they accept it. So what was that like? What was that process?
So, at first, I made the vision board for him.
Wow.
So, ladies, that is not the right way to go. At first, I made the vision board. I said, this is your vision. Here it is. Look at it every day. Then, secondly, it was a task for us to do together. So, we got the prick stick out, got the scissors, we did it together. That didn't work. But now, to my surprise, God's blessing, he's got his own board up. He's put it up on the wall, and he's like, yeah, just going to stick some stuff the other day. I couldn't believe it. I didn't say anything. I said, great idea.
And that he wanted to do it.
Literally, it has to be their idea. And
decided, and the thing is, I was buying like paper from WH Smith. He's got the pin board. Like, he's like mine's on a foam board. Like, he's gone all out. Like, his looks legit.
Okay.
So, ladies, I'd like introduce them, but let it be their idea.
And then don't say I told you.
Don't say I told you.
Just say that's a really good idea, babe. I'm really happy you done that.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you guys done one together? Because I know that some couples do joint vision boards.
So actually, this year I did something different, and I sent all my goals on email to him. And I've asked him to send one back to me, because I think it's very important that we're so like open about where we're heading. Because you want this person to come along on the journey with you.
Yeah.
So therefore, you have to be willing to share, and you have to see where you can work with each other. Because again, we go to couples therapy, which has been amazing.
We're going to talk about that.
And it has really opened our eyes onto how we're two individuals that need to come together, and what we need to do in order to compromise. And it's been amazing.
Okay. I've got so many questions and so many comments on that. So what were your first sessions like? Where are you now? And what have been the main things that you've learned? And have you learned anything about yourself that you didn't realise until you started going to couples therapy?
It's been a journey. Okay, the first couple of sessions are like really mind-blowing, because everyone's just saying stuff that you haven't heard before. You haven't heard it before, and you're looking at your partner like, who are you? Like, is this the person I met? Like, everything's just brand new, like all built up emotions that no one's ever said before. and you're just kind of looking at your partner side eye, like that's what kind of happens. But the beauty of it is that you unpack it, and it all stems from something, probably from childhood, probably from upbringing, how they grew up. And it's just beautiful to uncover, because then you're like, oh,
I understand.
now I understand why you act this way. Now I understand why that thing that I do may be like a quick switch for you to be angry. But now it's just like our levels of communication is just so much more open. And I feel like anytime we have a problem, it's not quick to get into an argument, because it doesn't need to be an argument. It just needs to be a discussion, and you need to understand where the other person is coming from. And it's just worked loads. A lot of our homework is to talk to each other, and you think, oh, talk to each other, but are you really listening to your partner when they speak? That's very, very important. Like, you let your partner ramble on, sometimes you think, yeah, I've heard you, but have you heard what they said, really?
So you introduced me to your couples therapist.
Yeah.
And I've been going for premarital counselling, and it has been the best thing that we've ever
Amazing.
done. And that definitely made me realise that a lot of the time, like, I'm saying stuff. So she done an exercise where she said, Jamelia, say something to John. And then she said, all right, John, now repeat what Jamelia said. And what he said was so far removed from what I had said. I was like, how in the world did that even happen? And then it made me realise how much of what I'm saying is actually getting lost in communication and is causing unnecessary conflicts because we're not listening to each other, and we're not having appreciation of where the other person is coming from.
Of course.
Is that something that you noticed when you've done those kind of...
Oh, yes, 100%. And also that listening is hard. The first time we did that exercise, at the end of the exercise, we was like, that's hard, boys. We actually have to listen to each other. Like, to listen to somebody and even repeat what they said verbatim is actually very difficult. Like, you have to take in everything they said, every emotion. You have to really concentrate on them. And in our busy lifestyles, we're thinking of so many things at one time. We don't have time to listen to you, but in that moment you actually have to, because if you think about it, when you have your child, if your child calls you mummy and you can't stop and listen to exactly what your child needs, that is a madness. So it's a skill that we all have to develop.
Do you think that the conversations that you guys have had and like the breakthroughs that you've had would have happened had you not gone to see a couples therapist? Do you feel like it's something that you could have done by yourself?
No, we needed that intervention.
Is it like the mediator, the person that is completely unbiased?
Yeah, the person that can see it from both sides. No one's right or wrong. Like, that's what I love about it.
Mm-hmm. And what have you learnt about yourself through going?
Oh, well, apparently I've got a bit of attitude. Don't know where that comes from. But also, it's interesting because in my last session, she said, you are so focused that sometimes your focus can make you feel like you know better. And I think that's very, like, important for, like, I don't know, career women to hear, because we're so focused of being, I don't know, like the next Oprah, you know, the next Michelle Obama, that it's just like, are we damaging people's egos? And I'm not saying it from a perspective that we shouldn't, like, feel like, oh yeah, we're that girl, but how do we communicate to other people just because we're so focused on what we want to do, or so focused on our goals? And there's not one path to success. So just because I would do it this way doesn't mean you need to do it this way, and doesn't mean the way you think about stuff is any less to what I think of. We just have to be, like, really mindful of how we come across sometimes when we, like, how we communicate.
So you spoke about damaging egos. Do you feel like that's something that you've had to consciously pay attention to? And do you feel like you've ever been in a position where you've had to, like, shrink yourself or, like, step back from something or deny yourself of something in order to protect your partner's ego?
I think for me, what I did do, which a lot of females do, is I did lose myself. Like, last year, I feel like I put a lot of effort into fixing my relationship and thinking that I was going to be the one, I was going to be the savior to save how we are. But it's not your burden to carry. You can't carry all of that by yourself, because it's meant to be both of you working for the greater good. So that's the reason why we went to counselling because we needed someone else to help with that burden. In terms of shrinking myself, I just feel like I'm never going to do that.
Sorry.
You met me fabulous. We're going to stay fabulous. Like, I feel like hop on board. But this was part of the problem in therapy last week. Like, she was like, you're so focused on all your goals and your goals are amazing. But remember, there's not one way to success. And it's so true. Like, I know how I know how I am with my goals. I need to be mindful of how that comes across. And if his version is different to mine, I need to accept it.
What do you think you were doing before you were trying to change it so that it was like yours?
Yes.
Is there anything that she's told you about yourself that you've been surprised about?
Not really. I think we all know deep down.
So you haven't ever been offended when she said something and you've been like, oh no, that's not true for me? Or she said stuff and you've been like, yeah, actually that is true.
Sometimes when she does speak about how a woman should be in a relationship, sometimes I'm like, am I a feminist? Because I'm like, I feel like this is very like, oh, the woman should do this and the man's ego, we should be, he needs to be the head of the household, like all that stuff. And for me, I'm like, I don't think like that. I'm not traditional like that. I don't believe the man should be the head of the household. I believe that you can both be the heads and you can both grow together and you can, like I'm not like that. So sometimes I'm like, oh, is she speaking from like a traditional viewpoint that because I'm so focused, I should like slow down in how I communicate things to him so like he can like, be the king, etc., etc. But he can still be the king, but I'm not going to slow down who I am as a female or who I am in terms of what I want to achieve.
Yeah.
So that's sometimes my conflict.
Yeah. Something that I struggle with is I grew up in a single parent household. My parents got divorced when I was 2, but they've always done a very good job of co-parenting. But I'm also conscious of the fact that I've got very few examples of a successful marriage. I can name 2 couples who I know who are older, who are actually married, and they're like my friends' parents. But I've always been very conscious of the fact of I've been raised by a woman that's very independent, very driven, and has been very successful in her field. So, like, what does that mean to me? And then how is that going to translate once I get married? Because I've seen this example of motherhood. What's it going to be like when I become a mother? And that's something that's actually made me really paranoid. And that's why I've been going to premarital counselling as well. Because I need to know what I need to bring with me and what I need to leave behind.
I agree.
In order to have a successful, like a truly happy and successful marriage. Have you had many examples of good marriages or like good relationships where you're like, that's what I'm going to be like when I'm married, or that's what I want our relationship to be like?
Well, similar to you, like my parents are separated. My partner's parents are together, but they've had times of separation. So for me, I haven't seen, like, out of all my aunties, I actually haven't seen like a blossoming 2-parent household that's been great. But I think the blessing that I have is that I'm very, very close to my dad. And as I was growing up, he always used to say things in terms of when you're married, this is how you should be, but not from like a place of patriarchy, from a place of when you have your own family, this is how it should go. Like, don't use look at our family and essentially don't be like it. Essentially, it's like when you start your family, these are the things you can do to overcome certain issues that like my parents have had. So that's the blessings I've had, and I'm hoping that through therapy that's what I'm starting to uncover more and more, that I've taken those lessons and I'm not gonna like essentially be like how my parents like were back in the day.
Do you feel like there's additional pressure on yourself there?
It is, I think, because I think that's where some of the frustration can come from, because if you've come from a background where it's not a 2-parent household, you're trying your best to make something work that you've never seen. So I think for me, when I look at my relationships, I'm like, I'm fighting for this because I don't want to end up like how my parents ended up. I don't want to be fighting. I don't want to be separated. I don't want, because they separated at a time where we was all kind of grown up. So it was just weird.
I feel like that can show up in 2 ways though. It could show up as like, I'm going to make this relationship work, even though it probably shouldn't. I'm still going to make it work just because I don't want to be like them. or it can show up as I'm going to take the precautionary steps necessary to make sure that we don't get to the point where we would need to split up.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with you. And that's why it's just so important to know that you're two individuals coming as one. Because his experience is totally different to mine.
Same. Same. So John grew up in like the most beautiful marriage that I've ever seen. So his perspective on family is completely different. But we had the same conversations at first again, like, you two are two individuals and you're not fighting against each other, like you're coming together for a united purpose and for a united reason.
Yep.
And I think because as women, especially as women that are very, as you said, career focused, raised by independent women, surrounded by very independent, successful women, we sometimes just, I don't know, we can have like a very tunnel vision.
Yeah.
Very, narrow
minded, very like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do, hop on or hop off. Like, it's very real. And I think I want to be an example for my daughters and my daughters' daughters. Like, I don't want to look back and be like, oh, I shrunk myself, oh, I didn't really go for what I wanted to go. I don't want that to be my narrative.
It could backfire as being an unwillingness to compromise.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that came up.
I feel like it's just such a fine line between so many things.
It is a fine line. And my mum is like, she is what I'm explaining, like, she is tunnel vision. Like, she is, I am going to get my goals. I am doing this. This is what I've set for myself. It's going to be done. Like, that's the energy I get it from. Like, she is that to a T.
Have you seen any couples where you've been like, wow, goals?
I mean, Beyonce.
This is...
I mean, do you mean close by?
No. Even like older, I don't know, you said no aunties and uncles, like maybe his parents or...
I love how his parents are now. Like, I think what his parents have now is so beautiful. Like, how many parents do you know that, you know, will pray together every morning and pray together every night? Like, when I was staying, like, at his for a bit, that's what they were doing. Like, they would pray together every night, pray together. They say bye to each other when each person's going to work. They'll be like, bye, see you later. Like, that, I don't see that anymore.
Yeah.
But I think they've had to come through a path where they've had to be like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And his mum pulls me to the side all the time to speak to me about how I should be in the relationship, etc. But it's very traditional view.
What does she say?
So for her, she's like, well, number one, they're like devout Christians, so it goes back to the word all the time. But it always comes to, oh yeah, he's the head of the household. If he's angry, then you should take some time out to like understand why he's angry. Like, very like, not really like get into the root of the cause. It's almost like I need to change myself for someone else, and I don't think I'm willing to do that.
So do both of you feel it's been important to be with someone that both of the parents have been in their life?
Do you know that I intentionally said that I'm not marrying someone that comes from a single parent household?
Oh, good.
Because I said one of us needs to know how this thing works, and it's not me. So we need an example to follow.
Yeah.
And I think they've been the best example. The hurdles that they've had to come across are ridiculous. Like, you can't even comprehend it, but they are a unit. And I've seen when his dad frustrates his mum, and she'll like roll her eyes, say what she's got to say, but at the end of the day, they have a lot of respect for each other. And that's, I think that's probably the best relationship advice I've heard, is like, whatever happens, just have respect for each other and be kind. And I was like, it's so simple, but a lot of the time we're not respectful and we're not kind because I'm in my feelings because you've done something to annoy me and now I'm being disrespectful. But then if you're disrespectful to me, then it's World War III. So respect and kindness are actually key in relationships.
It's so important. And I feel that, for me, that's something my dad always used to say to me. Be respectful, always talk, don't be silent, don't do this whole thing of going to bed and being angry. Like, all that stuff, that's what we're all just like putting that into our relationship because it's so important. And it's better to learn now.
Yes, I completely agree.
Yeah.
I do feel like there's been different relationships have changed as generations go on. So grandparents wouldn't have dreamt of getting divorced.
Yeah.
And then there was the generation that did get divorced. And now I feel like we're entering a new generation where relationships look completely different.
Yep.
Like, they truly equally yoked in that the man can be as successful as the woman,
Yeah.
or maybe the woman's more successful than the man, or vice versa. But I feel like there is this level of understanding and commonality that's now being birthed, which I think is really good. But what's been really important for me is to have people to talk about relationships too, but then also surround ourselves with other young people in relationships.
Yeah.
Because again, someone has to know what to do.
Someone has to know, and I do have these open conversations all the time, because I feel sometimes as women we just want to keep all these feelings to ourselves, and I just feel like it's not right. We're
not
going
necessary.
to burst.
Yeah.
We'll actually burst. So I openly, as long as I can trust you, or I just don't mind having this open dialogue, because I want to learn from as many people as I can,
possible,
because relationships are not easy. It's not the relationship goals you see online. It's not all that. I mean, if lemonade can come out, that's how you know it's not all gravy. Like, we need to be having these conversations all the time, of, especially from a self-love standpoint, because it's a reflection of ourselves. What are we putting up with in relationships?
How have you dealt with self-love? Because something that I've noticed, and I think it's just like a natural maternal instinct, is that, like, if John's like slightly, if he's not in his best state, then I want to always be like, oh my God, like, are you okay? Like, should we go out? Should we blah, blah, blah? Like, always trying to make sure that he's okay. But something that he taught me is to stop doing that and to put myself first, because he will easily be like, no, Jam, I'm not coming to this family party because I haven't meditated all day and I haven't eaten and I haven't been gym and I need to do them things for me, so I'm not coming.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, I was like, how dare you? But then I thought, how dare I expect you to come out and you're not in your best state? Like, why should I force you to do that? And why should I even force myself to do that?
Exactly.
So, self-love for me has actually been learnt through being in a relationship with someone who puts themselves first and is unapologetic about it, but will also know when to put me first. So have there ever been times where you've had to catch yourself and be like, actually, Mori, take care of Mori before you start taking care of other people?
Well, that's how I felt last year, when I felt like I lost myself, because I was always trying to make sure if my partner was okay, and especially like going freelance, that was different. And like, I just felt like a whirlwind. Like, I was just like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Like, the relationship is not as right, but I've gone freelance and I need to concentrate, but I need to make sure my home is right, etc., etc. Like, all these narratives. But also, as you were speaking, I was thinking, oh, why do we always have this thing where we want to save face? Because what John did was so right. Like, how can he come out and smile at people without getting himself right? And honestly, the latter half of 2018, that's all I was doing. I was getting myself right. Up to this time, I've literally been putting myself first, because I can't pour from an empty cup, and I can't like be there for my partner if I haven't even showed up for myself. I need to put myself first, and it's been 10 times better ever since I've done that.
Yeah, and I feel like that's definitely something. Obviously, I'm not a parent yet, so Javita, you could speak to this a lot better than I can. But I've heard that you also need to continue that into motherhood, in that you can't be a present and positive mum if you yourself are not right. And
you know what? That's including your relationship as well, though, because a lot of people, when I was pregnant, would say to me, "Oh my gosh, like, you know, your relationship's gonna get more difficult now." And I read something Aisha Curry said about her and Steph in, I think it was Ebony or something. I read it online, and she basically said that she learned from her parents and other older relationships that you have to put your relationship before your children.
yes,
Because
I saw that.
In order for your children to have good growing up, you need to be that example. You guys need to make time for yourselves, which makes sense now. I learned that from reading that last night.
Hence the calendar, and this is why we have the calendar. This is why we have to actually map out time for ourselves to actually have fun, because we get so busy. Like, if I have an event on, if I'm doing a launch for someone, or if like it gets pretty intense, like the relationship is, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing this. You can see I'm out all night. But do you know what? He's just so supportive, because if I'm working late, he will come out and pick me up. Like,
that is good.
And at the moment, we're not even living in the same household. So imagine he's picking me up, dropping me, and then going to his own house. So, like, that those little things have been a blessing, and that's where he's been like super supportive in this whole transition from being like full-time to like freelance.
Something that therapy made me realise as well is that you don't know, it's important to know what the other person values.
Yeah.
Because for you, that's a sign of love. Like, that's a love language for you,
Yeah.
the fact that he actually left his house to come and get you and drop you home. Whereas you may, well, thank God that you are speaking the same language, but you may have been looking for him to do something else, and he may not have been able to fulfill that. So do you believe in the whole love languages? And do you guys discuss that?
I do. So before me and my partner actually were official, I made him do all the tests underneath the sun. So he did the 16 personality tests. He did the love languages test. He did any psychoanalysis text that I could find on Google. Like, he's done it, and I've got all the results. So I do advise other women to do the same, because I actually feel like it's so important to know these things. So my top 2 love language is quality time and words of affirmation, whereas his top 2 is gifting and doing things. What's the doing things? Service. So those are his top 2. So where it was lacking is the quality time, because we just wouldn't schedule the time for each other. And in therapy it was so interesting, because he was like, oh, I see quality time as if she's there, I'm playing game, or like we've just eaten.
Just being in the same room.
Just being in the same
That's
room. And then my head literally went to the side. And I was like, that's not quality time. Like, for me, we need to go out, we need to build experiences, we need to see the world, we need to go to nice restaurants, we need to do all these things. And we had to come with a compromise. But it was just so funny, because he literally saw me being in the same facility, just like the way we're sitting now, as quality time. And that for me is all right on, like, you know, on a normal day, but that's not building an experience for me. Like, we should have memories that we're able to tell our kids about.
Yeah. Do you think your quality, your love language has changed over time?
Well, I need to do it again. Maybe it has. But I still think quality time is very, very important for me. I love building memories. And that's essentially why I love what I do. Because if you think back from, like, a birthday I did, it should give you a warm feeling.
It does. There we go.
Yeah.
So what's next? So are you guys going to continue going to therapy, and for how long? And then how are you going to know when it's time to be like, okay, we've got this, we can handle this on our own?
It's so interesting, because I do think about this all the time, but I think I want to secure a good year underneath our belt before I'm like, yeah, we've got our training roles, we can do this. But if it does feel like if quicker than that, like, we're already doing all the things we need to do, then I don't need to, because it's all the things that you hear in therapy, you know that you're meant to do. But I guess when it comes from someone else, it's just like, yeah, we really need to do it.
And is he as receptive? Because I know that I feel like there's a stigma towards therapy, full stop. And then black people, full stop. And then men as well. It's like,
a big full stop.
Triple threat.
Yeah. So actually a lot of, like, male friends that I've spoke to in the past, they're like, I would never go. If my girlfriend asked me, I would never go. And I'm just thinking, wow, like, why is there such a bad rep in going to therapy? Like, it's actually been great. It's been phenomenal, actually. But he's been so receptive, and I think that's even a blessing in itself. And I can't take that for granted. I have to understand that the fact that someone's willing to come with me and do this step, I have to be grateful, because a lot of men wouldn't.
I have to agree. Yeah, John was not keen on it at first.
Yeah.
But then as soon as we had the first session, he was like, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of the best things we've done.
And also, it's so funny, because when my partner found out it was a woman, he was just like, oh, I got a woman. And I was just like, this is not a film. Like, she's not going to side with me on everything. But it's just been like, she's so lovely. Like,
the first 2 sessions, John was like, did you notice that when you said... I was like, she's not taking sides.
She's not taking sides. She's actually very, very diplomatic. She does not take sides. But it's just so interesting that they think like that.
Well, thanks for joining us,
thank
Mori.
you.
Learning more about your obsessions with events and therapy, especially relationship therapy. And thank you for the recommendation, because it's definitely
Oh, you're welcome.
Me. But hope to have you back sometime to discuss some more topics.
Yep.
Is there anything that you want to share as far as, like, what you're working on, where people can find you, etc., etc.
So you can find me on Instagram at Miss Mori, MISSMORII. I also have my website where I keep up to date with all the stuff I'm doing, so eventsbymori.com. And yeah, I'm working on some like great influencer activations this year.
Let's go.